Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
The progressive priesthood and its exploitation agenda. How much have name changes, white actors bowing out of roles, and gigantic Black Lives Matter Boulevard murals helped the Black American community? That's the title and subtitle of an important column this week from LibertyNation.com. Socio-political correspondent Jeff Charles addressing the question that actually matters amidst the widespread criminal behavior in our great cities, masquerading as a social justice movement. And Jeff joins us now. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Tim. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I want to read a quote from your story and then have you comment on it. You say, whenever progressives launch a campaign ostensibly designed to benefit minorities, it's reasonable to assume that they have an alternate agenda, one that has nothing to do with those they say they are helping. So, precisely what is the agenda for the Black Lives Matter movement beyond condemning and doing all they can to eradicate what they call a structure of white supremacy?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when you're looking at the Black Lives Matter organization, we're talking about the national Black Lives Matter organization because there's a difference between the overarching, what I call Black Lives Matter Inc., and then like the more local groups and just people who are on board with the movement itself. Mm-hmm. Now, the objective of the Black Lives Matter movement, if you go to their website, you'll see it in the What We Believe section. You're going to see a lot of stuff in there, but what you won't see is any mention of the police or of police brutality. Now, that is why the movement was originally started, was to address police reform. But when you look on their website, you see very little about it. It's mostly about pushing an agenda that has to do more with a white progressive Marxism than it does with protecting Black lives. You see a lot of things about like the LGBT community. You see things about eradicating the nuclear family in the Black community. So this doesn't really have much to do with saving Black lives. It's a whole other agenda that is basically what I call white progressive blackface, because that is what's going on here.
Every time we see an episode of violence in the streets, it seems that there are white people in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I call the National Black Lives Matter organization, these are white progressives in blackface, because these are the people that are going out there rioting. I'm not saying that there's no Black people rioting. That is happening. But if you look at what happened in Portland and with that, the police officer, Officer Jakari, who basically talked about when he's seeing these protests and he's out there trying to, do what he can to mitigate it, it's mostly white people. And the white people are discouraging Black people from even having a dialogue with the police officer. So this is not Black Lives Matter. This is a very white-driven organization, white progressive-driven organization.
It's remarkable the number of white people who are anxious to publicly express their shame at being white.
Progressives always do these virtue signaling type of deals where they're going to build a mural, but they're not going to try to affect real change in the community. They'll do these surface level things that don't really matter, but it gives them the ability to say, hey, look at how great I am, Black people. This is what I'm willing to do for you. And there are a lot of Black people, not just on the right, but Black people who vote Democrats who are calling this out. And I've even seen some on Twitter being sarcastic about it. Okay, so you can do a mural, you can change the name of your band, but you won't actually work for police reform. You won't actually work to affect change.
Jeff, I get this creeping feeling, just a feeling, can't prove it, from observing all this mayhem in the streets, that there must be many, many Black people who are actually uncomfortable or even alarmed at being lumped together with Black Lives Matter and might quietly reject the Democrats or not vote. Is there any logic to that, do you think?
Yes, yeah, that's actually more spot on than you might think. Most Black people are on board with the Black Lives Matter as a concept. You might see them marching with signs saying Black Lives Matter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're attached to the national organization. And what we're seeing now is we see people in New York and Minneapolis, Black community leaders speaking out against this whole defund the police movement, because again, they know that this has nothing to do with helping Black people. As a matter of fact, it's going to harm Black people, and it's not going to harm the people pushing for it. So there are a lot of Black men and women who are angry about this. You're not going to hear about it though, because CNN's not going to cover this. MSNBC is not going to show you these people. They do pop up in certain reports and certain local reports, but I think that there are a lot of Black people who are pushing back against this. Black people want law and order. They just don't want police officers to be able to abuse their power and get away with it. So they're more likely to go for police reform instead of defunding the police.
Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jeff Charles, LibertyNation.com.